Hello, I'm Dickie Arbiter in London.
And I'm Victoria Arbiter in New York, and you're watching Royal Report. On November 14th, King Charles III will turn 75. Now, as with any other royal milestone birthday, there have been any number of articles, very rah, rah, rah in their tone, and all of them read a little bit like an obituary. But the fact is, the king is very much alive. He is full of vim and vigour, and he'll be approaching this birthday with a very impressive initiative at play. More about that in just a moment. But anyone who has tuned into Royal Report before knows that Dad and I are very big on trying to combust some of the myths that have become fact over the years. And we really try and seek to offer a little common sense and context to the royal sphere. So before we get into the merits of King Charles and what makes him who he is today, Dad, I would like you to knock two of the silliest rumours I have ever heard on the head. Number one is that King Charles travels everywhere with his own loo seat. And the other is that he insists on having a valet squeeze his toothpaste for him. Now, you say there are very good reasons for both.
Well, there are very good reasons for both. I mean, they've been a myth for so long that they've become fact. I mean, it's the same as the other one, that he talks to plants, which again was a throwaway, and I'll come to that in a moment. But the loo seat, it's common knowledge, I don't know about the rest of the world, but certainly in the UK, when you want to go to the loo and spend a penny, you usually announce that you're going to the throne room rather than I'm going to the loo if you're with a party of friends. And Princess Anne, Princess Royal, got hold of this one. So one Christmas she gave him a leather-bound loo seat so that he could have his own throne. And that's the genesis of that one. As far as squeezing the toothpaste, well, that, quite frankly, is another myth that's grown up in the sands of time and become fact. What happened in the early 90s, we were at Highgrove and we were filming something. He was doing a piece to camera for Prince's Trust. And then he went off to play polo at Cirencester, and I stayed behind and had lunch. And we had a phone call which said he's come off his horse and he's badly injured. So I dashed down to the Cirencester Cottage Hospital. What had happened is he broke his arm. He broke his right arm. And he broke it not in one place, but in three places. And he had manipulation under general anaesthetic. I went out and talked to the media afterwards and gave them the full gist. And a big question was, will he play polo again? Yes, of course he'll play polo again. End of. That was the story he killed. As far as squeezing toothpaste, well, if you've got your arm in a sling, you can't work a toothbrush and a toothpaste at the same time. So his valet would squeeze his toothpaste on his toothbrush. Didn't brush his teeth for him, he did it himself. But if you've only got one arm, it's amazing how many things that you cannot do with one arm. You find it very difficult to get dressed properly. You can't do shoelaces up. You can't do a lot of things. So that's where that particular story came from. So let's kill those two, the loo seat and the toothpaste, once and for all. As far as talking to plants, around about the mid-1980s, it was about 86, I think it was, he got involved with ITV, who were making two documentaries about the Prince and Princess of Wales and their children, called In Private, In Public. And the in private bit, obviously, was all filmed at Highgrove. And it was a throwaway line between filming that he was tending some plants or sort of deadheading something. And one of the production staff talked to him about the plants and growing. And he said, well, I talked to the plants. And that's how that story grew up. It's a bit like saying, well, I had a dog, I talked to the dog. You talk to your cat. They understand. Quite frankly, it's a throwaway line. But again, it's something that the media picked up on. And even today, I read something in a diary column that he can always, if he's stuck, he can always talk to the plants. So here we are in 2023, something that happened in 1986 is still coming back to haunt him. So these myths do grow up in the sands of time, and quite frankly, new generation of reporters, they will continue perpetuating these myths as fact.
I love that here we are talking about the King's 75th birthday. We've already lowered the tone talking about the loo and the throne room. So, time to class things up a little bit, I think. King Charles is something of a Renaissance man. He loves the opera, he loves ballet. He's a prolific author. He is a prolific watercolorist. Actually, he's considered to be one of the UK's most successful living artists. Like his great great grandmother, Queen Victoria, he prefers watercolors and he paints scenes of natural beauty and lakes. And his paintings have sold for huge sums of money, which in turn he uses to support his charities. He loves Shakespeare, loves Shakespeare. This is clearly a very sensitive man, but quite a proponent for the arts, and he has done so much to support the arts in the UK. But also, of course, much like his mother before him, he has quite a long list of firsts that he's achieved. He was the first member of the royal family, or first heir to the throne, I should say, to go to a traditional school versus being educated at home. He was the first member of the royal family and subsequently the first monarch to get a scuba diving license. And actually, he carried out a series of dives to the Tudor warship belonging to Henry VIII, the Mary Rose. He was a bit of a daredevil. Of course, you're going to get into all of that in just a moment, Dad. But I think really when we look at King Charles, the sum of his parts is quite remarkable. He carried out all of his military service as was required. He became a helicopter pilot. He flew a plane. We beg to differ a little bit on this one. He did crash one of the planes.
He didn't crash it. He ran out of runway.
He ran out of runway and essentially crashed the plane.
I'd flown with him a number of times, both in helicopter, Westland Whirlwind, and also the BAE 146, which was then of the Queen's flight, which is one of those aircraft that he bent. Not badly, but he bent it a bit because he ran out of runway. And he was a good pilot. He was a very good pilot, as was his father, Prince Philip, an excellent pilot. But these things happen. So, but you say he was daredevil. He was called an action man in his 20s and 30s. He windsurfed. He jumped out of aeroplane. He got his parachute wings with the parachute regiment. As you rightly say, he flew aircraft. He flew helicopters. He was a bit of a ladies' man in his day. There was a wonderful picture on him on Bondi Beach in Australia, and an Australian lady clad in a bikini sort of throws herself at him to give him a hug and a kiss. He took it all in good spirit. But yes, he is an action man, and we're talking about him turning 75 on the 14th of November. I was at his birthday bash when he was turned 40, which was at the Tramshed in Birmingham. There, the whole day was devoted to the Prince's Trust. It's business as usual as far as he's concerned. He's not going to take the day off because it's his birthday. I was also there at his 50th birthday, which was at Buckingham Palace. Very different, but again with a slant towards the Prince's Trust. And his mother the Queen made a speech, and he made a speech in reply, in which he said, "Your Majesty, mummy." And it's the first time he'd used the word mummy, because he used it again in 2002 at the Golden Jubilee, and again at the Diamond Jubilee in 2012, and the Platinum Jubilee in last year. So, yeah, he's very much devoted to the Prince's Trust. But here we have a new initiative that I'd like you to talk about, which concerns food and food waste for his 75th birthday.
I think this is fantastic, actually, when members of the royal family do this. Prince William used his 40th birthday to highlight the homeless crisis across the UK. Of course, he's been working with homeless charities for many, many years, following in his mother's footsteps. And knowing the amount of press and publicity that is going to surround a milestone birthday, I think it's actually very smart thinking. So the King is doing something very similar for his 75th birthday, but instead of focusing on the homeless crisis, which William has continued to do with his Homewards initiative, the King is launching the Coronation Food Project. He's very mindful of how much food waste is generated every year. And he's been looking and working with a number of different groups to kind of find ways to save that food waste, how to use it to feed people, and to make sure that those in desperate need are being well serviced and taken care of. And I think, again, much like Prince William, he's been very smart. He's brought a number of different organizations together to work together. Unity through diversity has sort of been the cornerstone of everything he has ever done. So just to give you a bit of the blurb, just so people understand what's going to be happening, he really wants to shine a light on this cause, and he's seeking to, this is a phrase that's been thrown out, but turbocharge the sector's logistical capacity by providing warehouses, fridges, freezers, refrigerated lorries, and drivers. And so really the aim of the project is to distribute food to new hubs around the country. They're going to be initially in London, Glasgow, Merseyside, and Northern Ireland. A further 4 will be built in the locations deemed the most necessary. The list includes Cardiff, Leeds, Birmingham, Milton Keynes, the North East, and South West. We do understand that the King has made a significant 6-figure private donation to support this initiative as well. And really, it's a very smart way to draw attention to a crisis that is affecting people up and down the country. And I think it's in keeping with the way the King has done things before. You know, obviously the Prince's Trust has had a significant impact on young people. Now we've got an initiative that really is going to help huge numbers of people. The statistics are pretty shocking when it comes to those who are hungry and in need. And so this is a way of reducing that waste, which feeds into all of his eco-credentials, but also benefiting people around the UK. He's also going to be working with farmers, producers, manufacturers, and supermarkets to ensure that no more food is going to waste. And he's going to be working with a number of charities as he seeks to promote this. So all of this, again, sort of feeds into the notion that he is a workaholic, which Queen Camilla has complained about in jest before. This is a man who even Prince Harry said used to fall asleep at his desk writing letters. It's sort of the scrawl running off the page as he just can't keep his eyes open a moment longer. But you were speaking to his talents before, Dad, and I think what people may not know is that he's an accomplished cello player, that he is a member of the Magic Circle, and he wrote a wonderful children's book, and I was very fortunate. You did get me a copy when it came out, but The Old Man of Loch Nagar, which is a beautiful story. And he went on a children's program back in the day called Jackanory, and he read it out loud, and he does all the voices. And the Queen has talked about this as well, how the grandchildren are enchanted by his ability to do all the voices in Harry Potter. He's got just such a lovely voice to listen to as well. And so I'd love to know, Dad, sort of more, these are things that people that have followed the royal family might know about our king, but people around the world who sort of only see what's pushed in the press, which is typically a rather negative view of the king. What are some of the other things that you particularly enjoyed about him when you got to witness him on a day-to-day basis?
I enjoyed his sense of humour. You know, people don't see that. They think, oh, he hasn't got a sense of humour. But if you go back to his university days, and certain clippages of film have found their way onto the internet. There's a wonderful scene where he's playing one of the goons. He loved the Goon Show. I mean, I'm now going back to the 50s and early 60s, and anybody of that vintage will know exactly what I'm talking about. Spike Milligan, Peter Sellers, and Harry Seacombe. It was a terrific show. It was and he would do all the voices, and he would burst into laughter. But before I go further on that, I want to go back on this food initiative of his. You mentioned supermarkets. I wonder how many people who are viewing this now have walked into a supermarket and seen the staff clearing shelves of foodstuff because it's gone past its best before day. This is a bit of a misnomer now, and a lot of manufacturers, food manufacturers particularly, are getting rid of that because a lot of food, because of the way it's processed, it lasts longer than the day mentioned on the packet. So this is a good initiative on his part to move out and get all that food that is being thrown out by supermarkets into a proper system where it can be used usefully. But going back to him as a person and his sense of humour, yes, he does play the cello. I don't think he plays the cello now, but he certainly did when he was in his in his 20s when he was at Cambridge, and he loved acting. He still loves acting. And occasionally, I know in my day that he would use a goon voice. I remember on one occasion we were in Brazil and I had to go and brief him about something that we were doing that afternoon. And he said, "Have a drink." And I said, "No, thank you, sir, I don't drink." And a goon voice came out and said, "Have a drink." And with that, his valet was mixing a drink. Now, he drinks martinis. And if I explain how the martini is made, most people will know it's made with a gin base. But no, his valet would put a bit of vermouth into a glass, shake it around and throw it out. Not the glass, the vermouth. And then he'd fill it up with gin. And then he'd hand me this glass and say, "Well, there you are, sir, cheers." And Charles would look at me and I'd sort of put the glass to my lips, not taking it because A, I didn't drink, and B, I couldn't stand the smell of gin. Anyway, we were called, we had to go out, and with that, he went first. I threw the martini over a yucca, and off we went. I don't think he ever knew that I did that, and he probably knew I didn't drink it anyway, but he was just being hospitable. I was obviously doing a good job. I hope I was anyway. But he was, in his off time, he was very relaxed. But the trouble is he didn't have much downtime. He was always working. There was always something to do. His office, his study at Highgrove would be piled high with books. Bookshelves, yes, full up, but there'd be books on the floor. There'd be his boxes. In those days, he was Prince of Wales. He'd have a blue box with the Prince of Wales feathers imprinted on it. There'd be papers piled high, and he would go through everything meticulously, from his charities, from government ministers, from overseas charities, you name it, the paper was there. And yeah, his Queen Camilla was absolutely right. There'd be nights where he'd fall asleep at his desk, and we're talking about 11, 12 o'clock at night. He's a man who doesn't revel on too much sleep, and doesn't require too much sleep, but he does work. And I think in the job now he's at as King of the United Kingdom and the head of the Commonwealth and the realm states, there's a lot more work than he thought there would be. He thought probably when he became king that there wouldn't be as much as when he was Prince of Wales, but there probably is a lot more, and more that has to be turned around in a matter of hours, not in a matter of days, which is what he was doing as Prince of Wales.
I think the public actually really got some insight during the pandemic when everyone was doing their Zoom calls and people saw his desk, whether it was at Burke Hall or Clarence House, and it was piled high, as you said, also littered with family photos. But clearly, this is a man who is very well read. And you talked about his love of acting there. There's a wonderful skit. I can't remember. It was one of the Shakespeare celebrations, but he does he joins Dame Judi Dench and an array of prolific actors doing a bit of a turn on To Be or Not to Be. And he surprised the audience when he came in at the end and did his bit too. And it was fantastic. And I think that speaks to his sense of humour. There's also footage of him doing the weather. I think that was up in Scotland, and he had a great time with it. He always sort of jumps in both feet first. And that's what I admire about the king. He's the first to laugh at himself and tries to sort of put the negativity to side. But on November 14th, 1948, King Charles was born at Buckingham Palace. His father, Prince Philip, was playing squash with his private secretary at the time, just trying to distract himself, I think. But when Prince Philip first saw his son, it's reported that he described him as a plum pudding. The crowd outside was going wild, and eventually someone had to come out and tell everyone to go home because people were partying in the streets that the Queen had safely delivered a son.
And the fountains in Trafalgar Square were throwing up blue water.
Which was wonderful. And then you cut forward, of course, to Prince William's birth, and Prince Charles was in the room when his son was born. William was not the first royal baby to be born in hospital, but he was a first heir to be born in hospital. So from us to you, sir, we wish you a very happy 75th birthday. Of course, there is going to be this coronation food project that is going to kick off, but we have been told that he's going to be doing something private for close family and friends at home as well. So hopefully you can relax and enjoy that. Whatever you are doing to mark the King's 75th birthday, please let us know in the comments section below. We know we have a lot of ardent royalists that are tuning in each week. We're delighted to have you here. So let us know if you remember when the King was born. Perhaps you are over the age of 75. If you've met the King, what it is you most enjoy about the King. We do read all of your comments and we would love to refer to them. And of course, any questions you might have on a future edition of Royal Report. So please click subscribe, like, ring the bell, and here's wishing you, King Charles III, a very happy birthday. We'll see you next time on Royal Report.